Hi, my name is Kizar, and today we're going to be looking at the grandfather paradox. So this right here is what a lot of people imagine a time machine looks like. But with time travel, there's a lot of questions that arise. But time travel in a physical realm is pretty much not possible because of the amount of countless paradoxes that it could lead to. And the paradox we're going to be taking a look at today is called the grandfather paradox. So, what is the grandfather paradox? So, let's suppose a man traveled back in time and killed his biological grandfather before the time traveler's grandfather met the traveler's grandmother. As a result, one of the time traveler's parents um, and the time traveler himself would have never been conceived. This would imply that he could not have traveled back in time after all, which in turn implies that the grandfather would still be alive and the traveler would not have been conceived, allowing him to travel back in time and kill his grandfather. Thus, the possibility seems to imply its own negation in a type of illogical paradox. So this diagram actually does a very good job at explaining the grandfather paradox. So if you look at the top, you can see the time traveler being born, and then that time traveler creates a time machine, which then he or she uses to go meet with their grandfather, and then the time traveler kills his biological grandfather before meeting his grandmother, so the time traveler's father or mother would not have been conceivable, which would result in the time traveler himself being unconceivable. Um, and if that was the case, that means that the time traveler would not have been born, which means the time machine would have never been created, which means that the grandfather would have still been alive, which would mean that no one would have died, which creates the paradox as a whole. In order to find a solution, many physicists and scientists lead back to quantum physics to come up with a solution for the grandfather paradox, which is what physicist Detut's quantum solution states. This is quoted from the Scientific American. Instead of a human being traversing a CTC to kill her ancestor, imagine that a fundamental particle goes back in time to flip a switch on the particle generating machine that created it. If the particle flips a switch, then the machine emits the particle back into the CTC. If the switch isn't flipped yet, the time machine emits nothing. In this scenario, there's no a priori diminishes certainly to the particle's emission, only distribution of probabilities. Detut's insight was to populate self-consistency in the quantum real, to insist that any particles entering the end of the CTC must emerge at the other end with identical properties. Therefore, a particle emitted by the machine with a probability of 1/2 would enter the CTC and come out at the other end, flip a switch with a probability of 1/2, inbounding itself at birth with a probability of 1/2 going back to flip the switch. If the particles were a person, she would be born with 1/2 probability of killing her grandmother, giving her grandfather a 1/2 probability of escaping death at her hands. Good enough in probabilistic terms to close the causative loop and escape the paradox. Strange though it may be, the solution is in keeping with the known laws of quantum physics. That concludes my solution to the grandfather paradox in regards to finding a solution through the use of quantum physics. Thank you. Have a great day.